not least, no, last but not least, is our final honoree, Chelsea Clinton, who is stuck in Omaha, unfortunately. But she tried very hard to get here. She was due on a plane last night, didn't make it out because of the crazy weather, and couldn't get out this morning on the only plane out of Omaha, which is 6 a.m. Anyway, we're thrilled to have her dad here, but let me remind you why she's getting the award, because she's an astonishingly hard worker and has given back an enormous amount to our country. And as vice chair of the Clinton Foundation, Chelsea works alongside its leadership team and partners to help create greater opportunities for people to build better futures for themselves, their families, and their communities. She's a tireless advocate for expanding access to early childhood education, improving the health and well-being of Americans across the country, providing the next generation of young leaders with the resources they need to turn their ideas into action, and ensuring the empowerment of girls and women is a cross-cutting priority across all of the Foundation's programs and initiatives. In addition to the Foundation, Chelsea serves on the board of its affiliated Clinton Health Access Initiative, which works to expand access to life-saving HIV and AIDS medications and services in the developing world, as well as on the board of the Alliance for a Healthier Generation, a partnership between the Clinton Foundation and the American Heart Association, which works to empower kids to develop lifelong healthy habits around food and physical activity. And if that wasn't enough, she also currently teaches at Columbia University's Mailman School of Public Health and serves on the boards of the School of the American Ballet, the Africa Center, IAC, Expedia, Clover Health, and the Weill Cornell Medical College. She's also the co-chair of the advisory board of the Money Institute at NYU. Her leadership in education and philanthropy is both inspiring and admirable, and traits that she is sure she will pass on to her children, Charlotte and Aidan. And in her spare time, she's also a best-selling author, critically acclaimed for her kids' books, She Persisted, 13 American Women Who Changed the World, and the companion, She Persisted Around the World. She's also the author of It's Your World, Get Informed, Get Inspired, and Get Going. And with Devi Sridhar, she wrote Governing Global Health, Who Runs the World and Why. As you know, her flight was cancelled, but we think her dad needs no introduction, and he will be accepting the award on her behalf. Mr. President.
Whoa. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I heard Joanna up here cracking jokes, making fun of being a mother, saying things we all knew were true, and I was just aghast. It reminded me that it really is not our language, it's hers. This English language she was born to. I had to acquire it, having grown up in Arkansas. I want to apologize for being here because Chelsea called me last night at 11:30, and she said, "Dad," and I was so nervous when I saw it was her, and then the minute I heard her say "Dad," I knew it wasn't bad. You know, it's the deal with your kids, right? This is odd. It could be bad. First word, thank God. And she told me what happened. And then she said, "But I do have a flight out at 6, but they say it may be canceled too. So could you pretty please bag your day off and go to New York?" And 4 years ago, when the Father's Day Committee honored me, she spoke. And I wanted to do it. And I now owe her big time, because I got to hear 3 astonishing stories. And thank you, Artemis. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Jan. It was wonderful. Hillary would have done it, but she's on a plane on her way back from Australia. So you're basically stuck with the third string here. And that's okay. Here's what I'd like you to know about my child. In some ways, she had a remarkably privileged upbringing, though we weren't wealthy by conventional standards till I got out of the White House. I had the lowest net worth of any president elected since World War II, but we had a good life, you know. And I was governor for 12 years, and it was interesting, but it was always tough. My little girl started reading the newspaper at 6 years old when I was in a very hot re-election campaign, and she read things that people were saying about her father. And so I talked to Hillary, and at breakfast every morning in that election year, 1986, we turned it into a political debate. 3 people were running, me, 2 other guys. They were saying I was the worst thing that happened since, you know, the volcano erupted in Italy. So we taught Chelsea about politics. We taught her to care about issues, put people first, and take criticism seriously but not personally. And she debated with us. Some days she would be me, some days she would be one of our opponents. And we tried as hard as we could to protect her from the slings and arrows and meanness of what has otherwise been a particularly wonderful life. She grew up to be somebody who was ferociously smart, with a heart bigger than this room, but could be hard-headed and disciplined, and is unflappably calm in the face of chaos. Much better than me. Totally calm. The night she was born was the greatest night of my life. Being president was the second best job I ever had. And watching her grow up and become both self-possessed and other-directed has meant a great deal to me. I love my son-in-law. That's a good deal, by the way. And she is a magnificent mother. Both she and Mark work. They both have to travel all the time. They try to swap off, so one of them's always home with Charlotte and Aiden. And because her grandparents live close by, including Mark's mother, we're just all the time showing up. And one of the things I'm really grateful to my daughter is that she has made her parents feel welcome in their home. That's a spooky deal, you know. I always call and ask. I don't just show up. And she, my son-in-law, my grandson, knew his numbers well before he was 2 years old. His dad picked a number out of a box when he was 19 months old and said, "Aiden, what's this number?" He said, 71. So now I complimented him, and he likes getting compliments. So when I see him, instead of saying, "Hello, Pop," he says, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He counts through that. My granddaughter says, just like her mother and her grandmother and her great-grandmother, she said, "Where have you been? I haven't seen you in a while." Chelsea would never say any of this, but I do want to say this. Once when she was in middle school, she wanted to get involved in tutoring, and she was tutoring these lower-income kids in the public school she attended in Little Rock. And then I started running for president. And you may 26 years ago, that was a reasonably rough campaign too. And there was a lot of controversy. And every time I was attacked for something, people in her school would rag her about it. Whatever anybody said, it automatically became gospel truth, and they would throw it at her. And one day this gang of boys got together and just was ragging on her terribly. And the largest guy in the school, who was from a poor African-American neighborhood, walked up to this gang of 4 other people. And he said, I don't know about any of this, but when I couldn't read, Chelsea tutored me. And if I were you, I wouldn't talk about this anymore. So Chelsea came home dancing on air, because she saw someone and saw something in them that other people didn't. One night she called me when I was president, late at night. She always called me late at night, and I said, it's pretty late here. She was at Stanford, and it was 3 hours early. She said, you're up, aren't you? I said, yeah. She said, I have good news and bad news. She will kill me for telling this story. I said, what's the good news? She said, Stanford invited me to apply for a Rhodes Scholarship. And the way it works, the colleges nominate them, and then you can choose to compete where you grew up or where you're going to school. I said, Chelsea, that's wonderful. What could be bad? She said, I'm not going to do it. I said, you afraid you won't win? She said, oh, no, I think I will. I said, are you afraid you'll win just because of who your parents are? She said, no. I said, well, then why aren't you going to do it? She said, Dad, I think I'll win because of the life I've had. She said, that's wrong. That scholarship should go to somebody like you were when you were a 21-year-old boy in Arkansas and had hardly ever been out of state. It changed your life. It should go to someone whose life it would change, not to someone who wins because of the life they've already had. I said, well, don't you want to go to school there? She said, yeah. Will you be able to afford to send me? I swear, this is the whole conversation. I said, yeah, by then I will. She said, then let somebody whose life it will change have it. And that's the way she raised her children. She spends a lot of time at the foundation, as you just heard, on early childhood education, because so much of the brain is developed, but also so much of self-image is developed in those early years. And we do have this wonderful program called Too Small to Fail. We've given away almost 1 million books now to reading sites places you wouldn't imagine. Cohen-operated laundries. You know how many poor parents have to go to the laundry and they're just sitting there with their little kids, and so now they can read. And the dozens of new parks that have been built around America. I went to one in Baltimore the other day, and I met this astonishing woman. I can still barely talk about a mom who needs a good Mother's Day. She got married late. She and her husband had their first child when she was 36, and he was 40. When she was 39 and he was 43, he died in his sleep one night. And she was left alone, a single mom, without a lot of education, no way to make very much money. But she determined that their child was going to be raised the way she and her husband had promised each other they would raise their child. And she said one of the things is she's going to have what she needs. She's this delightful, luminous 4-year-old child. And education. I said, you read to her a lot? She said 10 books a day. Every single day. Never any less than 10. I think my husband would be proud of what we had done. And I couldn't breathe. We're just one more time. This happens to you thousands of times. That's one thing I'm proud of my daughter, she knows she's going to take care of her daughter and her son and to empower them to treat others with respect as well as make the most of their own lives. But she wants to spend a lot of her life giving those chances to other people. Her grandmother would be proud of her. Her mother is luminously proud of her. Her father can hardly talk about her without crying. I once told her, I said, you know, Chelsea, when we were in high school, you thought you knew more than your mother and I did about everything. Alas, it is finally true. Thank you very much for doing it.